Okay. Okay, so today is July 16th, 2018. My name is Edna Sussman. I'm a reference librarian here at the Half Hollow Hills Community Library. We're interviewing Norman Tieman, a World War II Army Air Force veteran, as part of our Veterans Testimonial Project and in collaboration with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Thank you so much, Norman, for your service and for participating in our project today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Norman, where and when were you born?
I was born June 15th, 1924, in Brooklyn, New York.
And who were your parents? What were their names and occupations?
My mother was a housewife. Prior to that, she was a member of the Ladies Garment Workers Union.
Oh,
And she told me she was an examiner on ladies' shirts or clothes.
oh, okay.
My father was a individual private businessman. He used to sew burlap bags, ripping apart larger ones and then cutting them and making smaller ones
And what were they used for?
for plumbing supply houses
Oh.
to put fittings in.
Now, what were their names? Your parents' names?
My father's name was Max Wolf Tieman, and my mother was Yetta Udell,
How did he spell Wolf?
W-O-L-F.
Oh, that was my maiden name, but with two F's.
Okay.
So did you have any siblings?
Yes, I had a brother,
And what was his name?
Joseph
Did
A. Tieman.
Did he serve in the service, military?
Yes.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Was he older or younger than you?
He was about 18 months younger,
Did he serve at the same time you did?
a little after, because he was too young to get in. I got in at 18.
Oh, I see. And which branch did he serve in?
I think the Army Air Corps reconnaissance. They
And-
took pictures of troops
Really?
moving on the ground.
Was he, were you in at did your time to get overlap a little when you were both
Yes,
in?
it certainly did.
Wow. Was he sent abroad?
Yes, he was in Germany.
He was. Wow. Now, what were you doing before you entered the service?
I was in Long Island University. I wanted to become a psychologist, so I took courses in that area.
So how long did you go to college before you entered the service? A year or two, maybe?
Frankly, I just remembered I was not in college before I entered this service.
Oh, you just graduated from high school.
Right. And I was able to go to college because of the GI Bill.
After your service?
Yes.
I see. So did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Enlisted into the Army Air Corps?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why did you choose that specific branch?
Well, I thought I'd be a pilot, but I didn't and couldn't make it.
Oh, what, did they test you for that, or?
Yes.
Uh-huh. So, what happened when you departed for training camp and your early days of training? What was that like?
Well, I was inducted and sent to Camp Upton on Long Island and given shots and my clothes, military clothing, and we got on a train, and I think we went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
Okay.
for basic training.
How long was the basic training?
I think 4 months.
Wow. What made you decide, actually, going back to enter the service after high school instead of doing something else?
Well, I believed in the war. I thought I'd go to Europe. I thought I'd be fighting Germans. Instead, I was sent to the Southwest Pacific,
Oh,
a place called, I have memory lapses, I should
that's okay.
tell you.
That's all
A
right.
place called Nadzab
That's the town?
in New Guinea.
New Guinea.
Not much to look at.
Really?
No, just basically forest.
Oh, yeah, New Guinea, Nadzab.
Yes.
Nadzab. And how long were you there?
I would say maybe 6 months, but it felt like years.
Really? Wow. So after basic training, did you get any specialized training after the basic?
Yes.
Oh, in what?
Repair and maintenance of caliber 30 and caliber 50 machine guns that were mounted on, later I found out, I had no idea while I was in training, but were later mounted on the nacelle for the 50 caliber and for the 30s on each wing.
Of a plane?
Yes.
Wow. They must have been enormous.
The plane was P-38s, Lightning.
Now, these weapons must have been really big to be mounted on a plane? Were they,
Well, I don't know what you mean by
I don't know,
big.
I mean, it was like a machine gun?
It was a machine
It was a
gun.
machine gun.
Each one was.
Wow. So you maintained them for the,
Well, I must have been in La La Land, but I didn't appreciate the company I would have to keep if I were dispatched to that division of the flying, the group I was in,
okay.
which was
It doesn't say here.
the 8th Fighter Group,
Oh, 8th Fighter, yeah,
80th Fighter Squadron.
yes.
They appeared to me to be loud and vulgar and, if you don't mind, filthy.
Right, no problem.
Dirty.
Yeah, oh,
So, despite the 3-4 months of training I received at Lowry Field in Denver, Colorado, I went to the flight surgeon, and he managed to get me assigned to the medics.
oh.
So I was a medic, basically.
So you received training for that?
No.
Oh.
While I was in the hospital, I had jaundice.
Where were you stationed when you got that?
Got what?
The jaundice?
In Nadzab.
Okay.
So it's difficult. I was accepted as a corporal in the medics department of the 80th Fighter Squadron.
So was that after you had learned to do take care of the weaponry?
Yes,
So after that, you were happy to leave it to go to be a medic?
yes, and it was one of those things we cynically thought about and spoke about, that the military had some contradictions. I was trained in armament, and yet I ended up in medicine.
Right.
When I was in the hospital with the jaundice, they required us to stay for about 3 months in a bed. That was the only cure they had, was rest.
You're kidding? Really? For the jaundice, you had to stay in the hospital for
Yes.
3 months? Wow.
Yes.
How did you feel? I mean, you feel...
Well, I was bored.
Were you feeling really ill? Do
It
you,
was like the flu for 2 weeks, and I turned yellow. I used to joke about it that I could probably be a Japanese spy. So,
so you contracted that when you were in the Philippines.
oh yes.
So how come you didn't get?
I'm sorry, no.
No.
No, in New Guinea.
Oh, New Guinea, sorry, yeah. So the shots you got before you were sent abroad didn't prevent that from happening, obviously.
Right.
There were no shots for jaundice, maybe.
I don't know.
Huh. So just by staying in the hospital, you finally got better.
That was the cure.
Wow.
And I also, while I was in the hospital, I was pretty bored. So I asked if I could do some work in the laboratory.
Oh,
We used to give injections. I learned how to do that. And draw blood.
really? Wow.
The way we drew blood then, you'd stick a needle into someone's forearm, get a vein, and I held a test tube under the needle.
Oh, wow, and it dripped in?
It dripped in.
Wow. So, but you were okay doing that? You didn't mind?
No, I didn't.
Good for you, wow. That's pretty important work.
I guess it was. I used to do also some lab work.
Oh,
I remember right stain, and I used to identify the number of leukocytes. We had eosinophils, basophils, and neutrophils.
what are those? I have no idea.
They stained these different colors,
Oh,
and I don't know what they did with them, but I used to report that.
so after you got better from the jaundice, where did you then get sent?
So I thought the medics would be a good place for me, and I liked the people there. They were cleaner, neater, and it was an easier job. I liked it, as a matter of fact.
So where were you stationed then, going into someplace as a medic? Where did they send you after you got better?
Well, after I got better, I had to find my outfit, and I found that they had removed to the Philippines. And as informal as it might sound,
It's okay. We can move on. It's okay.
could I have a napkin?
Sure. I'm sorry. We don't have to cover that part if you don't want. You know, I left something out. We didn't really cover your, the basic training. Do you recall your instructors at all in basic training? What were they like?
Well, there was one guy nobody seemed to like.
Why is that?
Well, he was very harsh, and he was from Pennsylvania, so the crude thinking of those men then, and we were all doing it, and we regarded him as a Pennsylvania miner, and he was so hard on us that I remember someone named Thompson. I was horrified to hear we used to call him Stoneface.
Oh,
So he stopped him once when he was reviewing our posture with our guns
Right.
and whatever exercises we did then. And he said to him, "Sergeant," which surprised the sergeant to be addressed at all. You don't like talk to God that way either.
Oh,
So he just looked at him and he, with a questioning face, and old Thompson, we called him O-L-E apostrophe. Old Thompson said to him, "Sergeant," repeating the designated title, he said, "Did you ever have a mother?"
oh,
The next morning, he was given a detail. He had to fill his knapsack with sand,
oh, wow.
which we had plenty of because our parade ground was in Biloxi, Mississippi,
Oh,
and put it on his back and march back and forth, quick step.
it was like punishment?
Absolutely.
It was heavy, must have been very heavy.
Yes. And after about noon, he passed out, but he was okay in the long run.
Wow, wow. How was it for you adapting to military life? You know, the food and physical regimen early on when you were in training or right after? How was that with the barracks and social life? What was that like?
Well, there was a guy who came from the Bronx, and he was in my ethnic group. He was Jewish. His name was, not mistaking it, but to be Jewish, his name was Izzy Horowitz. And he was in New Guinea about a year and a half prior to my arrival, and he was an older guy. I'm laughing to think about what we called older. I was about 19, and he was about 24 or 5.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I decided, since he had been in the outfit for about 4 or 5 years and survived, that it would be good luck for me to hang around him. And I managed to get in his tent.
Oh,
So
where was this, in New Guinea?
In New Guinea,
So
Nadzab.
he had been there and then you got sent there and
Yeah.
got to know him.
yes,
Yeah. So you lived in tents there? You had tents?
well, we didn't have
Barracks? No?
that's laughable. Forgive me.
Oh, why?
No, that would be luxury. So, yeah, we lived in tents, and we slept on cots. We had mosquito nets, and despite the temperature, which was in the summer, in the heat of the day, was about 125 degrees.
Wow, really? Wow.
So,
How many guys to a tent? About how many?
4, I think. My memory's a little blurred on that.
That's okay, but it wasn't a huge tent.
No, well, big enough. Maybe as big as this table on the ground. And getting bitten by mosquitoes was considered pretty horrible. And I remember one boy, young man, came into the medics and he had a flushed face, and he said he was sick. And they didn't believe him at first because it would be a way of getting off duty.
Oh, I see.
But he was sent to the hospital, and next day he was dead
Oh, God. Of what?
from the mosquito bite.
Was it malaria or you don't
No.
know?
And after that, we were required to wash our clothes in Army's green soap, and there was a chemical put into it, which is, I still remember the name of it. was called dimethylphylline.
Well, that's pretty toxic stuff, right?
Whatever, it kept the mosquito, and then we had to dry our clothes in the sun, which took very much.
Did you rinse that stuff out? I mean, you washed it in that chemical and then rinsed the clothes?
By hand.
Oh,
So we were really walking around in soap,
yeah.
but it was better than getting bitten by the tick.
Wow. Huh. That's amazing. What was the food like? I mean, it was,
Well, the food I remember was what you got, so you ate it.
did you have like a mess hall, or you just ate in the tents with your buddies?
We would always tend to have a mess hall. And what I remember most, eating alone, and we had a canned food. I remember one can had some kind of egg in it, solid egg,
Oh,
and sometimes we have meat, but you couldn't tell what it was.
wow.
You had to go by taste
Wow.
as to whether you would eat it or not. And generally, I remember one time I told a guy sitting next to me, eating also, I said, I'm eating my dessert first, because I want to make sure I get that before I get killed.
Oh, gee.
I was half joking, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Now, what was your purpose in being in New Guinea there? What was the goal? What were your jobs there?
Well, I told you my job was
You were a medic.
the medic. But the objective, as I understood it, was to, with our outfit, we had fighter planes, P-38s. They were Lightnings. The nickname for them were Lightnings. They had two fuselages, and the cockpit was in the middle. And they were kind of clumsy compared to the Zeros, but they had better firepower, and
What's the Zeros?
Japanese Zeros,
Oh, that's their fighter planes.
yes.
Okay.
And our pilots were whiz-bang flyers. I remember one of them shot down 250 Japanese Zeros, and his name was, I don't remember, the Cali Cats.
Did you have a lot of that going on, which planes and they had to be shot down, or our guys were?
Well, they wouldn't be invited to come down because they wouldn't want to be.
No, but I mean, you had a lot of enemy military or planes in the area often?
No, I was very fortunate that way. That's why I wondered whether you'd want to interview me, because I didn't see much action.
That's okay. I mean, being a medic is a pretty important job, I think.
Well, our planes would go, maybe, I don't know, I never asked, possibly 40, 50 miles to attack Japanese airports with airplanes on the ground.
Oh,
Their quarters where they
Their
lived.
military bases, the Japanese bases?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. And then return. And then if I were in the department I was supposed to be in, they would take the guns off the planes, open them up, clean them out, re-oil them and reassemble them and put them back on the wings and the fuselage, ready for the next day's
Right.
killings.
So being a medic, you had a lot of injured or ill personnel coming back from
No.
these missions?
No, if you got hit, you didn't come back. You came down. So we had very little opportunity. I remember one time, this fellow, I almost had his name.
That's okay.
It sounds like, I think I might be mixed up, but it was like, Cantrell. His name was Cantrell. And his right engine conked out. He took off. He was maybe 50 feet above the trees, and he shouldn't have done it. He made a right turn on that dead engine, and you're not supposed to do that. If you have a dead engine, you turn on the live one because there was no lift, and he went right down. And surprisingly, he had a cut over here. I remember that, and
He survived?
yeah, he's handily.
Wow. Wow. So you were
Cantrell.
Cantrell.
Wonder what he's doing.
Did you keep in touch with any vets when you got out?
And one time I visited the doctor, and it was a little awkward. He had managed to get a girlfriend, and
You mean the doctor that you served with?
yes,
Ah,
and it was a pleasant visit, but awkward. So I guess I can't say pleasant. And there was never any further contact.
okay. So what did you do from day to day? I mean, as a medic, you kept the supplies and everything clean so that if you did need to use it? Or, I mean, did you have patients there?
Well, the GIs came in, and cuts. Sometimes we had I remember we had a syringe. It was made of metal, with the barrel was about this diameter, and we'd put warm water and some borax in it, and flush out,
Oh, to clean it?
clean out the ears. Some of the men had so much garbage in their ears. I don't know how they survived.
Wow.
I'm always concerned about cleanliness, and I had trouble with that. That's why I remember it.
How many, how big was the medical, you were like in the medical corps kind of thing, right?
No, well, remember it was just for the 80th Fighter Squadron, so we had about 4 medics
Uh-huh.
and Dr. Sisman.
Just one doctor?
Yeah,
Oh,
we called him a flight surgeon.
why?
Why?
What does that mean?
Well, because he was in the Air Corps. He didn't do any surgery, but that was the military title.
I imagine if you only had one doctor and the 4 medics, if anyone was really severely injured, they would have taken them to a different
No,
place?
a place like I was in,
Oh,
called a field hospital.
oh. You mean when you had the jaundice?
Yeah, or anything
Anything.
beyond the small emplacement in each outfit. And if the field hospital couldn't handle it, it would be sent. You'd be sent to a station hospital, which was a bigger one with more equipment, more facilities.
How far away were you from something like that with more advanced facilities?
I have no idea.
Oh, fortunately, you didn't have to
Well,
go there.
No. All I know was I was in this place with this small emplacement, and I survived the war.
How many military personnel were there in that unit? About?
In my unit,
Yeah,
the squadron,
yeah.
there were 3 squadrons, and they were called the 8th Fighter Group. We were the 80th Fighter Squadron. And we had, if I may estimate, probably about 15 or 20 airplanes
Wow.
and maybe 30 pilots.
And they were all on that same base with you?
They were designated 80th Fighter Squadron personnel.
Okay. So how did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
It used to be called V-mail.
V-mail?
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know, V for victory, I guess.
Oh,
You know, everything was
Yeah.
what,
Churchill?
yeah, that's Churchill's V for victory. What was your question?
So how did you stay in touch with family and friends from
As
home?
I said, by V-mail, and you'd write on it, and usually the ink ran. We didn't have ball pens as we do today. So I remember, especially in the Pacific, it was so hot, the sweat would go on the paper.
And run the ink?
Yeah,
Oh. So you got letters from home, though? Did you receive?
I wrote copiously.
Yeah.
And I used to keep a log of what I remember seeing and feeling about my circumstance. And I don't have it anymore.
Oh.
Don't know what happened to it.
Did you get letters from your family?
Yes,
They would write back?
that was a big day when we got mail. We crowded around the mail guys and had to wait
You just-
sometimes an hour before they got to your name.
Oh, wow.
My name began, as it still does, with the letter T.
Oh, the end.
I had to wait.
Yeah. You said you wrote notes about how you felt when you were over there. How did you feel over there?
I felt sad for our own boys and myself. And I also felt sad for the Japanese mothers and fathers.
Okay, so let's see.
It was mostly the terrible weapon we had, the flamethrowers.
Oh,
Imagine being in a narrow bunker with maybe 10 feet behind you and a wall and having a flamethrower.
actual fire on this thing that they were throwing?
Oh, it was fire, all right.
Wow.
And it could burn you alive.
So you were in the trenches sometimes?
No,
Oh,
no.
no, okay, good. But that's what went on over there? But near you?
Well, you sound a little dismissive, and
Pardon?
you sound a little dismissive
No, no, no.
and shallow when you say that's what went on.
I'm sorry, I
There was
didn't
too
mean it
much-
that way.
I'm sure you didn't. There's so much more going on. Sometimes, like when we went over in a ship, it was a Kaiser Liberty ship, it was called. And I remember being on a cot. There were about 4 cots attached to a post 4 men, one on top of the other,
In the ship?
in the ship, in the hold.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the hold, we were in the lowest part of the ship, the steerage, you might say. And when there was a submarine alert, they would make us go down into the hold of the ship and lock the hatch. And I saw the inside of there was no fancy finishing. It was metal. It was about 2 stories high. And if a torpedo came crashing in, we would not be allowed out because the ships were made in such a way there were compartments. And if one compartment got hit, closing it off would still permit the ship to float.
Oh,
But if you were in that hold, you drowned.
because well, if it got torpedoed, then the water got in. Is that it?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Wow.
Well, I was never torpedoed, thank God.
Now, on what occasions were you on a ship like that?
It took us 22 days from Angel Island, California,
Oh, to get to New Guinea?
to get to Nadzab, New Guinea.
22 days.
Yes.
Wow. That's a long trip.
And I remember lying on this cot for most of the time, not shaving, not eating, no bathroom. I once had to go, so I went to they call it the head, and I opened it. I forget what they call the door, and I saw it was about this high, sloshing around,
What was that?
vomit.
Oh, God. Wow.
I didn't vomit because I remained on this cot, and it was in the center of the ship, so it didn't go up and down too much. I felt fortunate.
But you still felt a little seasick sometimes?
No,
No.
never
Good.
did,
Good.
because I kept lying there.
Oh, I see.
If I went to either end of the boat, I would get seasick.
More movement there.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Wow. What were you supposed, I mean, did you, as far as your training was over at that point, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
On the boat, there was no more training. You were just going to your destination.
I was ready to kill Japanese.
Oh, wow.
We called them Japs in those days,
Yeah. Wow.
like they weren't human. A lower level of insult to the Japanese people was to be called gooks.
Gooks.
Maybe you heard that
I
term?
I did.
Yeah.
Were you kind of, were you a little afraid, or how did you feel going over there?
I felt numb.
Really?
Well, what could I do?
Right. You were how old?
19.
Just out of high school.
Yeah. Prior to that, I took a course in sheet metal, and I got a job out here in Farmingdale in the Republic Aviation.
Really? After high school? Before you
Yeah,
enlisted?
after, yeah.
Before you enlisted?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. And how long did you do that?
I would say about 4 or 5 months.
Uh-huh.
And then I had enough of that, so I quit. I got another job in a shipping department. I forget the name of the company, and they didn't like that, so I enlisted.
Oh, I see. Now, you were in the service until 46, so that was after the war ended, right? Where were you when the war ended?
The war ended when I was in an island called Shima.
Oh,
It was within sight of Okinawa. which was the larger area. And then we heard about some kind of bomb that was huge, and the Japanese were so afraid of it that they were planning to end the war and and
Surrender or?
surrender,
Uh-huh.
unconditional surrender. Our big shot general, MacArthur, which, as far as I know, in my experience, nobody in the Pacific, in the ground forces anyway, liked him.
Oh, really?
He was a big show-off. And I was very happy when Truman fired him. He wanted to take on 500,000 Chinese soldiers
Wow.
for his glory. I remember meeting a guy in the mess hall. He was sick of something, and he was so angry at MacArthur because MacArthur required a contingent of soldiers to blast a road up a hill, and he would have a cabin built on that hill, and 3 or 4 men were killed with the blasting, and he was in that outfit that was designated to do the building of the road.
Wow.
Then later on, we landed somewhere on an LST, and I remember I wasn't there, but I saw the movies that some GI had taken, where he had an adjutant that went on with the front of the ship went down, and vehicles and personnel would go up on the shore. But this time there was too much water. It didn't go close enough to the shore. So his adjutant picked him up like a baby and walked him onto the beach.
Oh,
And he just lay there. This is the great general.
wow.
Couldn't get his tootsies wet.
Oh, gee. Wow. It's an interesting
I
story.
still
Wow.
see I have feelings left about all of that stuff, that insanity.
What else do you remember of towards the end there when the war was?
Well, I remember I was on Okinawa later, and the Japanese flew in on what they called a Betty bomber. It was a twin engine. It looked like a smaller version of the C-46. You know that airplane?
No, I'm not familiar.
Well, it was called the workhorse of the Air Force,
Oh,
but the C-46 was big compared to that Betty bomber. They landed, and then I saw that for the first time, I saw a Japanese. 3 or 4 men came out.
of the plane, you mean?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And what the Japanese was?
And then they went over to a table, and the big shot General MacArthur sat there, and he looked like he was lecturing them, and they signed papers, and then they got on that Betty bomber and went home.
Was that anything to do with the war ending? They were having a meeting about the war
That
ending?
was the peace treaty,
That was a peace treaty. Oh, wow.
as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was my impression all these years. That was the peace treaty.
That's quite a moment that you witnessed. Huh. Wow, amazing. So how did you return home then? How did they send you home? It was in 1946? How did you get back home?
By ship, of course. And I remember doing something I've regretted ever since.
What was that?
Someone threw me a Spalding ball.
A what, Spalding?
Spalding,
Yeah,
the company name.
you're right.
And I threw it up in the air stupidly. I didn't know where it would go. And I saw it was heading for a bunch of guys. I said, "Watch out, be careful, it's a ball." So this fellow looked up and it hit him in the eye.
Oh,
I regretted it.
but that obviously wasn't your intention. It was an
Absolutely
accident.
not.
Yeah, it was an
It
accident.
was rubberized, but it still gave him a black eye.
Yeah,
And then later, I met him. He was leaning on a banister, or I don't know what you'd call it, the side of the ship, and he took out a cigarette. I didn't feel like I could smoke because of the heat, and I didn't want to put hot smoke down my
right, that was
into my
smart.
lung.
Yeah,
So I didn't. But it got cooler as we came north. Stupidly, I asked him for a cigarette, which wasn't a big deal then, because they were generously given to us
oh, really?
by the cigarette companies. I guess to get us hooked.
Right, right.
I didn't think that then, but I do now.
So,
And I started sporadically smoking
you did.
since then until 1970. Remember, this was 1946.
Six, uh-huh.
In 1970, I finally gave it up for good.
Wow, good for you. That's a long time, though.
Yeah.
So how were you received by your family and community when you got home?
I don't remember anything about my community. I don't think there was a community because there were a lot of us. So you didn't come as an honored victor against the forces of evil.
There was a lot of guys, a lot of service people returning at the
Yeah,
same
so
time.
the welcoming committee, if you had a family, was your family.
Right.
So when I came home, as usual, my father started to cry.
Oh,
And you saw me do that before. I inherited that from him, I guess.
and
And,
they must have been very happy to see you.
Yes,
Yeah, safe. And your brother, was he shortly behind you, or did he stay in after?
no, a couple of months later,
Ah, good.
and he was fine.
How was it for you to readjust to civilian life? How was that?
I think a lot of fuss is made about that, but I didn't notice anything different.
But once you got home, then what did you do?
Well, I remember hearing an airplane overhead, and I ducked.
Oh, wow.
But that was a minor form of PTSD.
Right, right. Did you then, you said you went to college after you got home? Was that
Well,
shortly
my
after?
brother came and told me that there was a new thing for veterans. It was called the GI Bill, and we could go to college free. And I was anything but a good student. And when I realized I could get into a college with the help of my brother's friend, who was admired by my then girlfriend, my first wife. He managed to get us in to Long Island University. And I felt lucky that I had that pull And I took 21, 23 credits
Wow,
a semester,
that's a lot.
and I got out in 2.5 years.
Wow,
And then I got into NYU,
that's good
still
school.
wanting to be a psychologist.
Really? Huh.
And from LIU to NYU.
And what did you majored in psychology or?
I majored in psychology and did okay. And then I got married when I was 22, I believe. And was torn over my work as a student versus the huge amount of effort that my first wife, Evelyn, had to put in to take care of the kids. Thank God her mother moved in with us, and she was a lovely lady. And she silently did what she had to do, and never complained. And the kids were apparently pretty content, but I was torn that each day, instead of going to the library, I finished writing my doctoral proposal, and instead of going to the library to get further information, I'd go home to help clean up the floor, table, whatever. And 3 years elapsed, and I got a letter from my advisor, Dr. Edward L. Kemp, and he said, look here, if you don't start working on your doctorate, after 10 years, your courses are no longer valid. You're going to have to be going back to school.
Wow.
Well, that scared me, so I came back, and in 3 years I finished it.
Your doctorate?
Yes.
Wow. And then what did you do with it? Did you practice psychology or
Well,
teach it, or where did you work?
I worked at the New York City YMCA as an intern. Actually, they called it an extern because I didn't live there.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. Hanna was the teacher who got me in, and a lovely man. And I liked the place a lot. I learned a lot about testing, psychological testing, although most of the testing I did was IQ testing.
Interesting. Wow. So how do you think your wartime experiences affected your life?
That is an unfair question
Oh, why is that?
because it's so complex.
Oh, it is.
And I can't say I could do it any justice
Okay.
sitting here and telling you how it affected my life. I'll tell you one thing that's the most obvious. The GI Bill affected my life and the lives of many GIs, and I dare say the lives of Americans in general.
In a positive way, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I shudder to think if all those educated men and women were to be dismissed from this world, this country would be far worse off. Or to put it in a more positive way, which I prefer, this country would this country is far better for having these educated people. I think I made a contribution to the lives of many people who sought psychological assistance, which I gave fully and persistently, working 60 hours a week to provide mental health services. And I understand I was appreciated
I'm
for
sure.
what I did.
You did a lot of good for a lot of people, I'm sure.
That's what I heard, and I'm glad of it.
How do you feel your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, I think it only confirmed what I nascently believe I felt about war in general prior to my service. Why did I join, you might ask?
Right.
Well, mainly because I was I was hoping to fight Hitler.
Right.
Coming from a Jewish background, what else could I do?
Did you feel in danger at all being Jewish being abroad? Did you feel,
No.
you were in danger all the time as a soldier, but,
Well, I had a fight once with an Irish guy who was very negative about my background. And interestingly enough, you'll be perhaps a little surprised to hear, he was an Irish guy with an Irish accent, but Jewish.
no kidding, wow, that's interesting. Huh.
And I pushed him around, he pushed me. He was like a gnome, Gnome.
Right.
He must have been around 5.5 feet tall,
Oh,
fat, and very unattractive.
no, wait, was he, how did you,
What?
he wasn't in your unit, or was
No,
he?
he was in the 8th Fighter
Ah,
Group, not in the 80th Fighter Squadron.
okay,
He was in one of the three belonging to the 8th Fighter Group.
I see.
And he had to do some duty in my medical tent. So that's how we met.
Oh, I see. Okay, is there anything, what message would you like to leave for future generations that might view this interview?
What
message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
the message is, killing another human being is not much different from killing ourselves, because they are us and we are them.
It's very poignant, thank you. Anything else we haven't discussed, Norman, that you can think of, that we haven't covered?
Well, we didn't cover an attack I witnessed one night. Three Japanese airplanes came over to harass us, disturb our sleep. And what it amounted to is not much. A huge 90-millimeter cannon went off 3 times. It was deafening.
Where was the
Definitely.
cannon? Where,
Well, on the island that we were stationed on. And then I looked up and I saw a trace of bullets. And I saw one of the Jap airplanes See what I said? Choppy airplanes.
Yeah.
Hit, came down, and I said, "What for?"
Wow, yeah. Yeah, that must have been horrible to see that,
Yes,
knowing there were human beings in there.
yes. But we call them gooks,
Gooks.
so they weren't human, quite. Maybe that's why they were gooks.
Anything else you can remember you'd like to share? Are we pretty well covered?
Well, I think the war did me a lot of good. I hate to say this, it sounds like a contradiction. But basically, for the dessert they gave us to feed on, which is called the GI Bill, I never could have gone to college. I never would have been the person I believe I became. And I felt smart, helpful, and dedicated to making the lives of people who honored me by coming to see me week after week and relying on my judgment. And I believe I did some good.
You did a lot, helped
Believe
a
it
lot
or
of
not.
people, it
I
seems.
think so.
Yeah,
I hope it's not delusionary.
no, I'm sure not.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Norman, for your service again and for sharing your military memories with us. Thank you so much.
I'm supposed to say it's been a pleasure,
It's okay.
but not quite.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.